The marble courtroom fell silent as Judge Amy Coney Barrett leaned forward, her black robes stark against the mahogany bench. In the next 30 seconds, the legal world would be rocked, shattering assumptions about judicial proceedings. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett stood at the defendant's table, her burgundy blazer crisp, chin raised despite facing one of America's most powerful judges. The case, a contentious voting rights challenge, had already sparked headlines, but no one anticipated Barrett's next move. Congresswoman Crockett, Barrett's voice sliced through the quiet, sharp and cold. Your record shows a pattern of disrespect for constitutional law that frankly disgusts me. The gallery gasped, legal observers exchanged stunned glances. Judges rarely spoke with such venom. Barrett pressed on, her tone escalating. You've spent your career undermining the foundations this court upholds, and now you expect mercy. Crockett's legal team froze. The prosecution appeared shocked. Even the court reporter paused, uncertain, but then something extraordinary happened. Instead of retreating, Jasmine Crockett smiled, a calm, deliberate smile that hinted at a plan. In that moment, she turned the trial upside down. To grasp the magnitude of this clash, one must understand the two women at its center and why their confrontation mattered to American justice. At 52, Judge Amy Coney Barrett embodied traditional jurisprudence. Appointed to the Supreme Court at 48, she was a staunch originalist, believing the Constitution should be interpreted as written in its time. A mother of 7 and devout Catholic, her faith and family choices drew scrutiny during brutal confirmation hearings. Critics questioned whether her beliefs would sway her rulings, probing her ties to faith-based groups and views on reproductive rights. Through it all, Barrett remained composed, her responses precise, rooted in decades of constitutional study. Her clerkship under Justice Antonin Scalia and years as a Notre Dame law professor cemented her conservative credentials. Legal scholars across ideologies respected her intellect, even if they disagreed with her rulings. Known for fairness and composure, Barrett had never shown bias from the bench, until this moment. Opposite her stood Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, 43, a progressive force from Texas. A former public defender and civil rights attorney, Crockett built her career championing the marginalized and challenging power structures. Her sharp wit and viral moments in Congress made her a standout, explaining complex issues in ways that resonated widely. Born to a working-class East Texas family, she earned a full college scholarship and law degree through merit. As a public defender, she won seemingly hopeless cases. As a civil rights lawyer, she secured settlements that reshaped industries. Her political rise was swift, defeating a well-funded incumbent against the odds. Crockett's outspokenness drew ire from conservative media, who painted her as a radical threatening American institutions. They criticized her defiance of traditional norms, questioning her place in power. The voting rights case brought her to Barrett's courtroom. 6 months earlier, Crockett challenged Texas's new voting laws, passed by a Republican-led legislature. The laws mandated multiple IDs, cut early voting hours, eliminated Sunday voting, impacting African American church programs, and criminalized assisting elderly or disabled voters. Crockett argued these measures targeted minorities, citing data showing disproportionate effects on communities of color, working parents, and those with disabilities. The state countered, claiming the laws prevented fraud, though evidence of significant fraud was absent. State Attorney David Morrison dismissed Crockett's challenge as political theater. The case's stakes were high, but the personal history between Barrett and Crockett added fuel. Barrett's prior voting rights rulings, which Crockett publicly called out of touch, had escalated tensions. Crockett's televised remarks questioning whether Barrett's faith influenced her rulings sparked conservative outrage, with demands for an apology she never gave. Instead, she doubled down, arguing judges must separate personal beliefs from legal duties. A ruling against Crockett could greenlight similar voting restrictions nationwide, potentially disenfranchising millions. A win for Crockett would rebuke such laws and challenge Barrett's judicial philosophy. The packed courtroom buzzed with reporters, activists, and scholars. Outside, protesters clashed and social media hummed with anticipation. Barrett's opening attack stunned everyone. The air crackled as spectators leaned forward, sensing history unfolding. Crockett's attorney, Marcus Williams, stood to object. Your Honor, these personal characterizations are inappropriate. Barrett's gavel slammed, echoing like a gunshot. Counsel will sit down. I wasn't addressing you. Williams sat, hands trembling. In 30 years, he'd never seen such judicial hostility. The prosecution, led by Morrison, smirked, expecting Crockett to falter. Barrett fixed her gaze on Crockett. Do you understand the gravity of what you're asking? To overturn duly passed legislation because you disagree. That's not how constitutional law works. The gallery murmured. Legal observers scribbled furiously, documenting Barrett's unprecedented behavior. Veteran court reporters struggled to keep up. Professor Martha Reynolds from Georgetown Law later called it character assassination from the bench. Crockett stood firm, hands clasped, meeting Barrett's glare. Your Honor, I understand the law better than you might think. Barrett's eyebrows rose at the audacity. Excuse me, I understand the law, Your Honor, Crockett repeated, perhaps better than some who confuse personal beliefs with constitutional interpretation. The courtroom erupted. Williams grabbed her arm, urging restraint. Barrett's face reddened. You will show respect or I'll hold you in contempt. Crockett replied, I show respect to the law. The question is whether this court does. Barrett pulled out a folder, her tone sharp. Let's talk about your record. You've voted against constitutional amendments 17 times, called the Constitution outdated, and advocated packing the courts. The accusations mounted, each one personal. You've attacked religious freedom, defended lawlessness, and now you undermine democracy. Crockett's supporters looked shaken, but Barrett pressed on, waving printed tweets. You've called this court out of touch, partisan hacks. Is this respect for judicial authority? Then Barrett made a fatal misstep. Perhaps if you'd studied constitutional law instead of chasing social media fame, you'd understand why your arguments are flawed. This isn't Congress. This is a real courtroom. The insult landed heavily, implying Crockett was unfit. But Crockett's smile widened. She reached into her briefcase, pulling out a thick, organized folder. Williams, sensing a shift, leaned back. The gallery quieted, anticipation rising. Your Honor. Crockett said, her voice steady but edged, since you question my constitutional understanding, let's examine some facts you've overlooked. Barrett's confidence wavered. What facts? Crockett opened her folder, revealing documents that unsettled the prosecution. Facts about who truly understands constitutional law here. The tension spiked. Barrett said cautiously, proceed. Crockett held up a document. This is your dissenting opinion in the Johnson case, arguing the Fourth Amendment doesn't apply to digital communications because the founders couldn't envision technology. Barrett's fingers tapped nervously. Crockett continued, but in a 2019 letter to the Constitutional Law Quarterly, you argued the opposite, that constitutional principles must evolve with technology. The courtroom fell silent, pens scratched as observers captured the moment. Barrett gripped the bench, composure cracking. Judicial opinions evolve with case facts, she said. Oh, we're not done. Crockett interjected, pulling another document. Your confirmation hearing transcript, where you said the Constitution guarantees equal ballot access and laws creating barriers deserve strict scrutiny. The prosecution shifted uncomfortably. But in the Pennsylvania case, you gave states broad discretion to regulate voting. That's not evolution. It's contradiction. Barrett stammered. Those cases had different facts. Did they? Crockett stepped closer, voice rising. Or different political implications. Whispers filled the room. She produced another document. This is a recording from your Private Heritage Foundation speech, where you said judges must sometimes set aside precedent to protect traditional values. Barrett's eyes widened. You advocated judicial activism while serving on this court. The prosecution looked panicked. They hadn't known about the recording. Crockett held up audio equipment and an authenticated transcript. You've attacked my qualifications, suggested I'm unfit, but I understand the Constitution isn't a political weapon. Judicial impartiality is our system's foundation. When a judge abandons that, they lose moral authority. Barrett sat frozen. Crockett raised a final document. This legal brief I co-authored in law school on judicial bias was called Brilliant by Justice Elena Kagan. The courtroom exploded. Reporters typed furiously. The gallery buzzed. Your Honor, Crockett said, facing Barrett directly, "You've questioned my credentials, intelligence, and place here, but the only person unqualified to interpret constitutional law, unfit to judge others, and lacking judicial temperament is you." Chaos erupted. Half the gallery applauded, the other sat stunned. Barrett's gavel slammed, but the noise persisted. Reporters uploaded clips, and #Crockett destroys Barrett trended. Barrett, once unshakable, looked powerless, her authority shattered by Crockett's preparation. Barrett called a recess, exiting unsteadily. Outside, reporters swarmed, camera crews multiplied, and news vans arrived. Social media exploded, with Crockett's unqualified line going viral. Progressive activists celebrated, while conservative scholars reeled. The Heritage Foundation recording sparked ethics investigations. Barrett's reputation took a hit. Her allies distanced themselves, and scholars questioned her consistency. Crockett's victory transformed her into a progressive hero. Her political stock soared, and she proposed judicial reform legislation, gaining bipartisan support. The case became a landmark in legal education, highlighting judicial bias and accountability. Barrett's behavior likely forced her recusal, further damaging her credibility. The confrontation reshaped views on judicial impartiality, proving even the powerful could be held accountable. The legal world buzzed for weeks. Barrett issued a statement regretting her tone, but stopped short of apologizing. Ethics groups demanded her speaking records. The incident spurred calls for stronger judicial oversight and changed how Americans viewed judges. Crockett's preparation and resolve exposed bias in a way that would echo for decades, redefining power dynamics in courtrooms nationwide.